Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're doing something, well, kind of huge. We are taking on the single largest conflict in human history. So buckle up, because in the next 5 minutes, we're going to distill the essential story of World War II, a war that literally set the entire globe on fire and completely reshaped the world we live in today.
So, where do you even start a story this big? Well, how about with a simple question? When did World War II begin? You'd think that'd be easy to answer, right? Turns out it's actually pretty complicated, because depending on where you were in the world, the war started at very different times.
See what I mean? If you were in China, your war started way back in 1937 with the invasion by Japan. For most of Europe, the date everyone remembers is 1939, when Germany blitzed into Poland. And for the United States, the war didn't really start until the shocking attack on Pearl Harbor in 1941. You had all these separate fires smoldering around the world, and they were all about to merge into one single global inferno. To get our heads around this, we're going to track the story through 5 key chapters. We'll see how it all got started, witness the unbelievable speed of the Axis attack, pinpoint the exact moment the tide turned, follow that final grinding push to victory, and then take a look at the brand new world that was forged in the aftermath.
So, let's set the stage. What was going on in the world that could possibly lead to a conflict this massive? Well, it was primarily fueled by the ambitions of these 3 dictatorships: Hitler's Germany, Mussolini's Italy, and Imperial Japan. They formed the Axis powers, and throughout the 1930s, they were on a mission, aggressively expanding their empires, grabbing up territory across Europe, Africa, and Asia, all in a relentless quest for resources and, ultimately, global domination.
With those ambitions set, the war in Europe began with a speed and a brutality that just shocked the world. Germany was about to unleash a terrifying new way of fighting on a continent that was completely unprepared for it.
After grabbing Austria and parts of Czechoslovakia, Hitler's invasion of Poland in '39 officially kicks off the war in Europe. And Germany used this new strategy called Blitzkrieg, lightning war. The idea was to use fast-moving tanks and aircraft in a concentrated punch to just shatter enemy lines before they even knew it hit them. And wow, was it devastating. In just a few months, Denmark, Norway, the Netherlands, Belgium, and then, unbelievably, France itself, all of them had fallen.
So how did they do it? How did they roll over these powerful armies so fast? The key was this genius and incredibly risky surprise attack through the Ardennes forest. The Allies thought this hilly, wooded area was basically impassable for tanks. They were wrong. The German move caught them completely off guard, sliced their armies right in two, and trapped hundreds of thousands of them against the English Channel.
And this is one of the most incredible stories of the entire war. With its army about to be wiped out, Britain launched a desperate rescue. The Royal Navy, but also this makeshift fleet of civilian fishing boats, yachts, ferries, anything that could float, sailed across the channel. And over 9 frantic days, they saved an astonishing 340,000 soldiers right off the beaches. It was a military disaster turned into a miracle that saved the army to fight another day.
So with France defeated, Britain and its empire were standing totally alone, and inspired by their new Prime Minister Winston Churchill, they absolutely refused to surrender. Hitler knew he had to knock Britain out of the war before he could turn east and invade the Soviet Union, so he unleashed his air force to bomb them into submission.
This was the Battle of Britain, the first major battle in history fought entirely in the air. Now, the outmatched Royal Air Force, they had a couple of secret weapons. First, this brand new technology called radar, which let them see German raids coming. And second, the deadly Spitfire fighter plane to meet them in the sky. That 1-2 punch proved unbreakable. German losses just kept mounting until Hitler had no choice but to call off the invasion of Britain for good.
For years, it really seemed like the Axis powers were just unstoppable. But all of that changed in 1942. This was the year. This was the pivotal moment when the tide of the entire war finally and permanently began to turn.
And the wild thing is, the tide turned everywhere, all at once. Across 3 totally different theaters of war, the Allies landed these huge, decisive blows. Out in the Pacific, the U.S. Navy ambushed and crippled the Japanese fleet at the Battle of Midway. In North Africa, British forces finally stopped the Axis advance at El Alamein. And then, most critically, on the massive Eastern Front, the Soviets managed to trap an entire German army in the city of Stalingrad.
And Stalingrad was on another level of brutal. The German army, which everyone thought was invincible, was stopped cold by this ferocious Soviet resistance and a punishing Russian winter. When the German Sixth Army finally surrendered in early 1943, it was a turning point. From then on, for the rest of the war, Germany would only know retreat on the Eastern Front.
Okay, so the tide has officially turned. Now the Allies begin this relentless push from all directions. You could just feel the walls closing in, squeezing the Axis powers between these massive armies on multiple fronts.
And then came the big one, June 6, 1944, D-Day. The Allies launched the largest sea invasion in the history of the world. 150,000 men stormed the beaches of Normandy, they broke through Hitler's Atlantic Wall, and they opened up that critical Western Front. This was Germany's absolute nightmare, a massive, unwinnable war on two fronts, forcing them to split their troops, their resources, everything.
So as the Western Allies are pushing in from France, the Soviet Union unleashes something even bigger from the east. An army of 2.5 million soldiers surged across Poland and into Germany itself. It completely overwhelmed the battered German defenders in a final bloody race to capture the capital, Berlin.
And with Soviet shells literally exploding over his head in Berlin and his thousand-year empire in total ruins, Adolf Hitler killed himself. Just a few days later, on May 7, 1945, Germany surrendered unconditionally. The war in Europe was finally over. But even with Germany defeated, the war wasn't over. Japan fought on with this brutal, almost unbelievable determination. The final push across the Pacific meant horrific, bloody battles for tiny islands like Iwo Jima and Okinawa. And facing the prospect of a catastrophic invasion of the Japanese mainland, the United States made a decision that would change the world forever. They used a terrifying new weapon. The atomic bombs on Hiroshima and Nagasaki, combined with a sudden Soviet invasion of Manchuria, finally forced Japan to surrender. On September 2, 1945, World War II was over.
The end of the fighting didn't mean a return to the way things were. Not even close. The sheer scale of the destruction and the huge shifts in global power created an entirely new world from the ashes of the old one.
And this chart just lays it out so clearly, how profoundly the world was remade. Before the war, you had the old European empires like Britain and France running the show. After, they were shattered, replaced by two rival superpowers, the United States and the Soviet Union. Germany wasn't one country anymore, it was split in two, setting the stage for the Cold War. In Asia, the war paved the way for the rise of communist China. And maybe most chilling of all, humanity had entered the terrifying new reality of the nuclear age.
But we can't talk about these geopolitical shifts, about the maps and the armies, without remembering the unbelievable human cost. An estimated 43 million people died in Europe alone, and that includes the systematic industrial-scale murder of 6 million Jewish people in the Holocaust. An entire continent was left in ruins, and generations were scarred by the trauma.
So it's easy to think of this as ancient history, right? But the war didn't just end. It fundamentally reshaped our reality in ways we still feel every single day. From the creation of the United Nations, which was designed specifically to prevent another war like this, to the nuclear weapons that still define global power, we are all, in a very real sense, still living in the world that World War II created.